Dear listener, welcome into Other People's Shoes, Season 17, entitled Dear. This season, we venture into emotional territories as we explore words left unsent through this intimate process of writing a letter that was never meant to reach its recipient. The raw, unfiltered authenticity that speaks volumes in these letters. These unrevealed stories, confessions, and reflections held within these letters until now are powerful. Welcome to Dear, sincerely, Other People's Shoes.
Welcome into Other People's Shoes, Season 17. Here we are. We are on the back half of the year, as I say, or maybe the middle of the year. We're leaning towards the back half of the year. We're in the middle of the year now. I'm excited about what we will open in the mailbox. Now, I don't know about anybody else. I still get a little bit giddy, a little bit jacked up, a little bit Christmas moment type attitude when that famous Amazon package shows up at my door, or in my case, because living out west, it's really hard to find anything. And I truly mean this, anything UNC, that's standing for the University of North Carolina, the only university that should ever be spoken of in my presence. Okay, fine. I'll allow one more due to the fact that my niece, Arena, is at UGA. That's how you say it. It's really the University of Georgia for those outside of Athens. Do I get excited every time something shows up in the mail? Yeah, I might be channeling my inner Blue's Clues moment. Look who got a letter. I wonder what's inside. Well, here's my friend today. Yes, his name truly is Noah. So prepare yourself. Get the animals together. We're on for an adventure of a lifetime. Noah, how are you today?
I'm great, and go dogs. That's what I'm talking about. UGA all the way.
Yes, at least you're not saying what your hat is. Now, we have to point out this, even though it's audio only, I don't do the video thing, but you are donning a Dodgers hat, which invokes so much in me being, I didn't tell you this in the green room, kind of on purpose, so to surprise you, I've been a Giants fan probably, I don't know how old you are, I'm not asking per se.
Ugh.
But I've been a Giants fan since 87.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a long time.
That's a lot of heartache.
Yeah, a lot of heartache.
That's a lot of heartache.
I actually knew one of the catchers there for a while. Last name Posey. I don't know if you remember him when he was a catcher.
Not familiar with Mr. Buster Posey. Well, of course I know who
Buster.
Mr. Posey is. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. Florida State guy, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah,
a lot of people don't know that. Yeah, Florida State guy. So sort of in your neck of the woods, but not really, because he's in the ACC at the moment. Florida State's being a baby. Oh, we didn't get invited to the thing. I'm so tired of that. Anyway, so UGA, that's exciting for me because, as I mentioned in my little monologue intro, my daughter, she's like a daughter to me. My niece goes there. My niece Arena goes there, and she will be soon being a senior at the University of Georgia, looking to graduate soon. So we're crossing our fingers on that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But yes, the Dodgers, much like the Blue Devils of Durham, not a fan, don't like the colors, and ironically, they match. And so maybe that's what I think of when I think of the Dodgers. I do think of the hated Blue Devils.
But this is like a real blue. You're wearing a baby blue. It kind of takes away the fierceness of it.
You did say like a gender reveal, which you can say, which I thought was hilarious. You said it's like a gender reveal party in my room.
Yeah, you look like gender reveal blue is what UNC looks like. So.
And you said it looks like a boy, which is okay. I'm fine with looking like a boy. Yeah. I know who I am. I know that's my identity. It's fine. I don't need to go find out what that looks like. Well, Noah, on to you and on to this excitingness that we're talking about in this new season. This is called Dear, with the ellipsis, by the way, which is ... which means something's missing. I learned that a while back, actually, from an unlikely source, but I did learn that. I can say I learned that. And I have been using
your niece at UGA. Do you
Probably.
think so?
Probably, because she's taking all kinds of these college classes, coming back with all this wealth of bulldog knowledge. Yeah, I'm sure it was from her. Truly, right. Let's give her site sourced and everything. For you, though, when we want to talk about this Dear moment momentarily, but I got to get this out of the way because it's so important question, and that's this. And I know you've been on this book tour, and we'll get to that too. Here's my question, and I'm sure nobody's going to ask you this, so I'll be the first. What size shoes do you wear?
Don't judge me. It fluctuates a little bit. I'm a small guy, 8.5. 8.5.
There is no shoe judgment here. We don't throw rocks at people. That's not very nice. When we invite a friend over to write a letter with us, we don't throw rocks at them. We just don't. Now, here's the most important question, though. Here it is. You ready? Brand or style? That's maybe more important than the shoe size. And there is only one answer to this question.
Is there, though? Because when I go to the gym, it's all about brand for some reason. When I'm like standing on stage and I'm speaking in front of people, it's all about style.
So is there a brand that we could settle on? Like I could go down to Macy's or eBay or Foot Locker.
For like working out, I wear a lot of On Cloud. For style right now, there's a boot that looks really cool. It has like a zip up on the side. It's called Bull something. They're amazing. They fit so well. It's a European brand and it's so nice.
We asked that. I know some have asked, why on earth do you ask that? And I said, well, here's the thing is I'm a very visual person and I love to use my imagination. I know as a guy that's maybe losing my man card a little bit. And I think in that we have to imagine what shoes we're in today. So if we're in other people's shoes, we got to know what shoes we're in. And we've done that from the jump, from the beginning. And in that, I thought, well, what a great way to kind of quirkiness, little awkwardness, little icebreaker to kick us off. That's the story behind that.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, here we go. The story behind our season. I always like to reveal this in a little more intimate way. So my family and I'm from Oregon, even though you make fun of me that I have all this Carolina stuff and baby gender reveal, which, by the way, you were the first to admit that openly. So that's fun. You get that distinction. My family and I went to the Oregon coast. In that traveling process, I love to get on the radio. I love to just have some tunes to travel with. I mean, who doesn't? You got that playlist. I at the time had XM radio. And so I'm listening to, I think, Prime Country, which I think is like 90s and 2000s country. And in that, this song by Brad Paisley comes on. His opening line is, "If I could write a letter to me." And I was like, that's interesting. And so, I kind of just file that back in the drawer somewhere. And then I'm walking along the beach and I'm really struggling with the show and where we're going to go and what I'm going to talk about. And so I get kind of alone and get quiet and I got the AirPods with me and I throw in just shuffle on one of my playlists. And this song by Mercy Me, it's a Christian band for those that don't know. And they write this song called Dear Younger Me. And there's a line in there that says, "Dear younger me, it's not your fault." And I just broke down like on this log, just kind of weeping, not sob crocodile tears, but just weeping. And I thought, man, if I could go back and write a letter to me, if I could write a letter to younger Neil, the things I would tell him to help him avoid the potholes, the sticky moments, and maybe, keep some of the good moments in there or maybe some of the bad moments because some of them did define me. But I'm wondering about this for you. No, when we talk about you, we asked you to help us with this. So who's your letter to? And why did you write it?
I really loved this concept, this idea for this season. It's really, really cool, by the way. It's kind of therapeutic. I wrote mine to my dad, who just recently passed away. He was such a big supporter of mine with all of my endeavors, everything I would want to be a part of or want to do. And gosh, even growing up, I remember if I wanted something at the store, my mom's like, "You can't have that." My dad would just slip me a few dollars and say, "Go get it. Just don't tell mom." That kind of person. That's who he was. And so it was kind of therapeutic. I wrote mine to my dad and just kind of told him, you know what? One thing I never told you enough was thank you. I talk a lot about with this book tour I'm on with Chaos is that when I was in my most chaotic moment, it was my dad who would just tell me, "I got you. I'm there for you." If any sort of haters were out there, he would be the one that would really, I almost sometimes would have to kick him out of the grocery store. I'm like, let's not, don't cause a scene, trying to have my back when I was going through my most chaotic moment. And that's just the type of dad he was. It was not until I lost him that I realized that I never told him thank you. This was a great way to just say, "Dad, thank you for all that you've done."
So it sounds like he was a pretty amazing guy.
Yeah, actually at his visitation, a friend of mine came up and said, I saw your dad yesterday. And I said, "Really? Where?" He said, "I saw a vehicle that was stalled out on the road and I saw a man pushing the truck. And so I ran to the road and started helping push the truck. And I looked to my left and I was like, 'That's your dad. What does he do?'" My dad had just stopped on the side of the road and he was pushing some lady's truck off the road just to help because it had stalled. And that's what my dad was really known for in town, was just always helping people.
So when you think about your dad and you think about these moments, one of the phrasings I really liked in preparing for this season was the unspoken word. Is there anything left unspoken with your dad? I know you kind of mentioned some of the things that you wish you could say thank you more. You wish you could do this more. Carrying that forward, is there others in your life that maybe need that thank you, that need that recognition? And if so, maybe who would they be?
Another very influential person in my life was always my grandma. She was a writer, so I kind of feel like I got the writing skill from her. I was lucky enough to be around in her last days. And one of the things that I told her early on, I said, listen, you could tell she was losing her health, I guess is the best way to put it. I remember telling her, I said, hey, grandma, like I'm finishing this book. And I said, I want to dedicate it to you. I want it to be your legacy. And at that point, she was not able to talk as much. And I just remember, I just looked at her and I saw a tear coming out of her eye as if like, wow, this is so cool that my legacy, I get to carry on through writing from other people. I would love just to tell my grandma, like, here it is, like give her a copy and say like, hey, here you go. This is it. We made it. Because I say we because it's such a team effort. And even the team that helped me with the process were all great and are all awesome. More importantly, it's those people who are not around anymore that I still feel like they're part of that we too. They're part of that team because they helped influence me and make me who I am today.
So Noah, when you talk about the chaos of life and you talk about the moments of dad being there, being your biggest advocate, maybe being your biggest supporter, I would even say cheerleader, no negative connotation. I hope somebody that's going to rile you up, that gets you fired up in a good way. Why do you think your dad chose to do that with you?
I think that's what dads do. They're our protector. That's just like the dad kind of character in most fathers is like they're the protector. And that's what my dad was. He was protecting me when I was going through my most chaotic part of my life. It's like he was not only protecting my sanity because I was just losing it because I was so stressed. He was not only protecting that, but he was also trying to protect my name. He was trying to protect my character. And that's just what fathers do. And it's such a good correlation when we think about our Heavenly Father and how our Heavenly Father, he fights for us, but he's with us as well. He listens to us when we are just needing to vent and release our frustration, our anger, or our joy. That's what our Heavenly Father does. And I feel like that's what is kind of built when you think about what an earthly father does. So for my dad to do that, it was out of pure love for his son. And that's what I'm so thankful for with my dad. It was a really hard time when he passed. I was actually at my parents' house that day and he came to me and he just said, hey, I want to tell you, like, I'm very proud of you. You've come so far. I'm so happy that you're buying this house. And he just gave me such like an encouraging word. And then he went and took a nap. And a few hours later, I told my mom, I was like, well, I'm going to try to wake him up and I can go get y'all dinner or something before I leave. And he just wouldn't wake up. And it was such a just chaotic, for lack of a better way to put it, it was just such a chaotic moment the next few hours through that process. But I remember it was probably about 3 days later, I went into my mom and dad's room and I sat on the floor and I shut the door and I just sobbed. And I was just crying. I was like, Dad, I'm so sorry because you have been there for me. And I feel like maybe if I could have come a little earlier, maybe if I try to wake you up a little earlier, I could have been there for you. And it took a long time. I feel like when you think of all the stages of grief, I would say I got stuck in true sadness phase for such a long period.
Well, you mentioned some of the chaos of life. I mean, we all have our moments. We all have our times of trials. I love the book cover, by the way. You in an umbrella, black and white photo. It invokes a lot of things in me, a lot of emotion in me. And you're kind of looking off, kind of almost like looking to the side. And we have a copy of it. Somebody can zoom in on that on our artwork of this episode. The umbrella, the whole design of it, as far as I'm knowing, I mean, I haven't done too much umbrella research. The whole premise of it is to keep you dry, to keep the elements away from you, to keep things from penetrating you in some respects. We've all heard it. Well, if you're under the umbrella, you're safe, you're protected. Do you think your dad was like an umbrella for you?
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, he was almost like an umbrella for me. He was protecting me from so much growing up, even to my adulthood. In any way he could protect me, he could. And on the cover, thank you for saying that about the cover. I actually woke up one morning really early and just had that vision. And I drew it on a piece of paper and I'm a horrible drawer. I'll have to show it to you sometime. It's so bad. But I sent it to the editors and I was like, do not judge my artwork. Can you make this happen? And they're like, totally. This is so cool. The idea of it, if you can't see it, if you're driving or something right now, I will tell you it's what it is it's raining words of chaos upon you. And it's words like rejection, addiction, divorce, incarceration, things like that. And as it's raining upon you, yes, the umbrella is the idea is it's covering you from those things as we look from overwhelming to overcoming. And for my dad, I would say, yeah, in a lot of ways, he was that umbrella for me, because when the attacks were coming and the attacks of life, even at an early age, yeah, he was always that protector type person. Yeah, good question.
Well, as I'm hearing you describe your dad, I would venture to guess, and I think it's a safe guess, that there are some guys listening right now, or maybe even some women listening right now, who would say, I don't know this dad that you talk about. This dad that you speak of isn't the dad that I have. Well, that's awesome that Noah had this amazing dad. They probably had catch together like in Field of Dreams. They probably went to baseball games together, maybe Atlanta Braves, maybe wore his Dodgers hat. That's awesome that they had all these moments together. Me, the dad you're describing, others would say, that wasn't mine. My dad brought chaos into my life. My dad looked at the umbrella and was like, no, you're going to have to toughen up, son. Snapped the umbrella in half and threw it back at me. What would you say to those folks that didn't have what you had?
Right. That's a really good question. And it's a deep question. My heart goes out for anyone that doesn't have that, because it's I am thankful for that. And when I go places, especially with some of these addiction centers and rehab centers that I speak at, I would say that that's one issue that's like, when I'm talking about the Heavenly Father, even, and how he does these things, I've had grown men come up to me crying, going, I don't understand even what you mean about Heavenly Father, because I've never had a father in my life. And so it's like, I can't relate. I can't correlate the two. I tell them for me, it was my dad. For you, it may be your mom. For you, it may be your aunt or your grandma or your grandfather or your best friend. The reality is sometimes your family member is not blood. They're the one you got to pick. And that's okay too. It's kind of finding that person in your life that you can relate to, that is your protector, and that is also your person that you can go to when you're having bad days, you're having sad days, you're having happy days, that person.
So why go to these addiction recovery centers? Why go to these places where dad issues maybe abound, where there's somebody walking through that, where somebody has carried that backpack around with them? Why go to those places? Do you have a background? Do you have a passion for those type of people? Or did you come out of that type of environment? Help me understand that.
Almost, I guess it's about 10 years ago, 11 years ago now. I actually had been incarcerated about 10, 11 years ago. And with that, I was sitting in a cell going, I need hope. I need help. And in that moment, I realized that there's no one around to help. There's no one that really, I feel like, that cares behind bars with me. I'm on my own in this. I told myself, when I get out and when I recover and go through what I'm going through, I said, I'm getting back in these places where the light seems so dim and so dark that I can go and shed just some hope for some people who are hurting. And that is my biggest passion. And the team that I work with, that's one thing that they'll always hear me say is, I want to make sure we bring hope to a hurting community. In these rehab centers, in these addiction centers, first off, the people that run these places, a lot of times they're the most welcoming, because they're going, we need all the help we can get. So they're great about letting you come in and share a message of hope. They also like to see is, okay, you've overcome a lot. With that, you can shed more of a, hey, I've been there, done that sort of message. And you can also show them, hey, there is hope. There is an opportunity to go from a prisoner to a published author, that sort of mentality. That really works well when I go to these places. It's almost like something clicks in some of these guys' heads, because they think, oh, this is it for me. This is my life. This is what I'll be. This is what I do from here on out. And I have to remind these people, I come in these places and I remind them, hey, listen, you are not what you've done. A line from my book I say is that the enemy tries so hard to destroy your character, but he cannot touch your calling. And I think that's such an important mindset to instill in these men and these women, is that, listen, your character may look wrecked right now, but that's okay. Your calling is still intact. Your calling is, I can't say the word, irrevocable. Is that how you say that word?
Yeah, I like irrevocable. That's good. No, irrevocable works. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And you can tell I'm a writer. I can write it, can't say it. That's the kind of thing I really like to bring into these places. And again, they may not be able to relate to my father in my growing up with a great dad. I feel like they can reach in and they can find someone in their life that they can think of as that person who was there for them.
So what led, I think the obvious question that everybody's probably perplexing right now is, well, what led to his incarceration, Neil? Come on. Don't forget to ask that.
What led to it?
Yeah.
I would say it was selfishness. That's the best way to put it. People ask me all the time, were you always planning to get so real in your book and raw in your book about your past? And I said, no. The answer was no. I would love to just kind of be a ghostwriter and just write for others and share a message of hope and hide a little bit. I realized that hiding looks like guilt and guilt looks like shame. I wanted to share a little bit about that. And I think it also kind of points people to, okay, this guy was a Saul and now he's a Paul. If that's a reference, you listening, you're not understanding that reference in the Bible. There's a guy named Saul and he was murdering Christians and he was persecuting Christians. And all of a sudden he met Jesus and then he had a name change to Paul and he started preaching the gospel and he wrote most of the New Testament. What I really wanted to show was that, okay, this is his Saul life and now here's his Paul life. When we talk about what led to incarceration, the best way I can say, after a lot of counseling and a lot of contemplating, the best way for me to put it is just selfishness.
Okay. So during your selfish period, during your, some would even say prodigal period, if they're from the steeple people.
Yeah.
That's a new phrase. We should put that on a shirt. Steeple people.
Yeah, steeple people. I like that.
Yeah, I just came up with that. So you can use that. If they're steeple people, they would say, wow, that sounds prodigal. That sounds the guy that says, hey, I want my inheritance. I'm going to go live it up in Vegas with Jimmy Garoppolo. Have a great time. And then realize the error of my ways and realize, oh, whoops, I'm out of money. Visa is no longer taking me and they're not everywhere I want to be because I'm now slumming it in the back streets of downtown Vegas. And then you realize and you come to yourself and you say, I'm going to go home. I'm going to go back to Uga. I'm going to go back to the happy place where everything is so much better. And dad welcomes you with open arms. And dad was there.
Yeah.
So in the chaos, in the midst of your prodigal life, where was your dad?
He was always one phone call away. First off, when he couldn't be with me physically, he was there for me, just one phone call away. Whenever I needed to just share what was going on, where I was and what I was doing, he was just my supporter. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. He was just my supporter. If I needed something, he'd say, okay, how do I get it to you? Also, when I was talked about, he was the one who was, again, protecting me kind of like with that umbrella. And then when I came home, he was the first person to just welcome me with open arms. And he knew that it was going to be a rebuilding process. I told him from day one, I said, you know what, God's got this. I said, he protected me in the storm. And I think he's going to protect me outside of the storm as well. And so we walked through that together. My mom was also in the picture and she's great too. She lives close to me down the road almost. And so she's great too. I don't want to not mention that because if she listens to this, she'll be mad. It'll be a hard dinner with her later if I don't mention her. But no, she's great too. And so they both are just very welcoming, very understanding that, hey, listen, people make mistakes. You know what? We don't care about your past. Let's look at your present. Let's look at your future and let's head toward better things. And so that's really what they both were for me. And gosh, I mean, what just great correlation about what our Heavenly Father does. Like you mentioned with the prodigal son story, just how his dad, he was walking. And I love that story so much. When he was walking, it shows how he was kind of practicing and rehearsing his lines of going, I'm unworthy. I'm unworthy. When I get to him, I'm going to say I'm unworthy. And before he could say I'm unworthy, his father runs to him. He doesn't have to run to his father. His father runs to him. His father embraces him. It's so crazy when we realize the further we get from our father and the people in our lives that can give us a sense of true reality of who we are. When we get far from them, that's when I feel like we're saying those lines to ourselves. We're unworthy. We are bad. We are, all these negative words. We are this, we are that. But then as our Father, our Heavenly Father approaches us and as our support team approaches us, we realize, you know what? We're not unworthy. We're loved. And that's what my dad did for me. He told me I'm not unworthy. I'm loved. And that's so cool that you mentioned the prodigal son story. Because that's such a true statement is that, we're not unworthy. We're loved. And that's such a good correlation.
So I'm guessing, just trying to read the room here for a moment, you don't have any children yet.
No, I have a puppy and he is more than I can handle right now.
All right.
Yeah.
So one day kids may come into the picture down the way.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah.
All right. Might find a nice girl from North Carolina. Who knows? Under a dogwood tree. Who knows? Maybe speaking that into existence. Who knows? It's great to think about this now, I think, truly. I didn't grow up with a great dad. Granted, I felt like he was Captain America in some respects. I felt like he was Chuck Norris. I felt like he was this larger-than-life guy. And then when I really got to know him, I was like, wow, he is those things, but he's also, in some respects, very broken emotionally and didn't grow up with a great dad and didn't grow up with great influences. And so I think to myself, well, if somebody didn't grow up that way, how can they immediately become that thing unless they do the work and put in the time? I would say this to you, thinking back over my young dad years, or even before I became a dad, there were so many things about my dad that I did not want to pass on to my daughter that my dad did to me. And there were so many things that I want to make sure my daughter knows that my dad didn't necessarily say or didn't do. I wonder for you, if your child somehow, through the power of technology, who knows what it's going to look like when you have kids? I don't know. Maybe it's 5 years down the way. Maybe it's 20 years down the way. Who knows? But in that, if they look back at your life and look back at the things that you've done, what do you hope that they glean or grab or hold on to about you that you want to make sure gets passed on to that next generation that you're involved with?
Oh, that's such a good question. I would say first and foremost, I want my kids eventually to know about me is that I just will help anyone. And I want them to see that in me and that they will turn around and do that for others. Also, too, the mentality of everyone hurts. Maybe they're not hurting right in the moment when you meet them, but everyone has moments where they're hurting. And you can always just cheer someone up with a little message of hope, a little bit of kindness. And I hope my kids see that eventually when I have kids, is that Noah was always someone who would just stop what he's doing to help someone. He would stop what he was doing to make sure that someone felt heard and seen. With my business that I own, I tell people all the time, people want to feel seen and they want to feel heard. Yeah, when I have kids, I definitely want them to feel seen and feel heard by me. I never want to be too busy where I don't stop and hear their stories or share with them what's going on in their life or what's going on, just whatever they want to discuss and talk about, whether it be princesses to football, hopefully Georgia football. I may have to disown them if they're a UNC fan. I'm just kidding. I had to go there. No, I do want them to just know that they can always come to me and talk to me as well, because I do feel like it's so important for people to feel seen and feel heard. I want them to know that and feel that I did that in their lives, but I also want them to know and see that I did that in others' lives.
Where do you think that comes from? That ability to continue to pass it forward, that ability to be the encourager, to be the umbrella to somebody's chaos?
Well, to pass that on, I feel like the best, just being a role model, but being an influence in their life. I want to show them and train them. The Bible says train them up. And I want to train my children up to do what I do. And one thing that I've learned too with some of the places that I've gone and talked to these guys is that they'll say that, I don't have that sort of father and I don't know how to be a father because I didn't have that. And I asked them, okay, well, if your father was around right now, what would you want them to be for you? And that question to them, a lot of times it's like, well, I would want them to encourage me. And it's like, okay, well, when you're a father, encourage your children. The whole idea of your podcast about the whole other people's shoes, put on your father's shoes for a minute. And it's like, what would you want your father to do for you? And how can you do that for your children?
Well, I think it does, because I think it falls right in line with what needs to happen, I think, right now in this world that we're in. Let's face it, I feel like it's not getting people aren't getting any nicer. You talk about Mr. Rogers of old, and some people don't even know who he is anymore. And the idea that I just feel like we're in this fast-paced, I can say whatever I want, I can flip out at anybody whenever I want, I can do whatever I want. I mean, it's this American mindset, I think, more than anything. My soapbox.
Yeah.
I'll jump off of it for a quick second. Truly, it's this idea that I'm somehow entitled to this thing, whatever it may be. I'm right, you're wrong. We can't have a conversation any longer.
Right.
And I feel like what you're saying, again, is speaking into the chaos And I know you're not a god or a deity of any sort. That's, by the way, how the big book of 66 other books starts. It says he spoke into the darkness. He spoke into the chaos. And so again, I'm not trying to elevate you any farther than necessary. I feel like what you're saying right now, Noah, is truly speaking into the darkness, into the chaos, and saying, by the way, there's another way.
Yeah.
So you talk about, sort of in a roundabout sort of way, your faith. What played a role in that? Can you describe what that looks like for you? Who played that biggest role for you? I know there was your dad. I know there's other relatives, but who plays the biggest starring role in making sure that the chaos of life is handled and held together and that you're protected? Who does that?
It's hard to say just one person. I have I'm so blessed with such a great team of people. In the book, I talk about before the storm comes and before the enemy starts to attack your life, because no matter what, I hope it's not a big storm and I hope it's not a big battle, but we all are affected by storms, and we're all affected by battles that come our way, whether it's emotionally or physically or spiritually. And I talk about in the book how important it is to have allies before the storm and the battle ever comes. And in the Greeks used to use a form battle strategy, I guess you would say. It was called hoplite. And the idea behind it was you would stand in a line. Everyone would hold a sword in their right hand and a shield in their left hand. And the idea was, as the enemy approached, you would shield the person on your left and fight for the person on your right. And I feel like when we really start finding people in our lives that we can lean on, that are our hoplite, that are our allies, when we are too weak and too paralyzed from pain to fight our own battles, we walk alongside people who are willing to shield us and fight for us on our behalf when we just can't. And so for me, to answer your question, I would say that I have a good support team. I just uploaded a video where we did an interview with someone from my team where we were baking cupcakes and we were just talking and doing some games and stuff. And her name's Carrie and her husband's name is Tim. And Tim and Carrie, gosh, they have been there with my life for 12 years. And they've been there for the thick and the thin. And they've been there through it all. They've been such great people in my life. There's somebody I really should write a letter to as well. Gosh, they're such an important part. And you never know when someone's not going to be in your life anymore. So I really should write them a letter and just say thank you more often than I do, because it's such an important thing to tell your hoplite and to tell your allies and to tell your support team. Thank you for fighting for me when I was just too weak to fight. In Mark chapter 2, you see these guys who lower their friend to Jesus because he was paralyzed and the paralyzed man couldn't do it himself. We need those people in our lives that will lower us to Jesus when we're just too paralyzed to do it ourselves. And I'm thankful that I have some good friends like Tim and Carrie that have come in my life and said, you know what, we believe in you. We know that you have a great calling on your life. We want to see it come to fruition. They've just been there for me through it all.
See, and I think that's fantastic. Again, having that network, having that community, having those people that can kind of sharpening iron, coming alongside saying, whoa, you're out of bounds over here. Let's get back on track. Okay, hold on. Gentle nudge. In a car world, we would call that lane assist, nudging you back into your lane.
It's a good way.
We need a lane assist on that.
I like that.
You talk about, again, Jesus. If he doesn't enter Noah's life, he doesn't walk in, if he doesn't come chasing you, maybe you chased him or maybe he came after you like the prodigal story talks about. How much chaos is in your life if he doesn't enter in?
Ooh, I don't think I would have made it. This sounds very dark and deep. And if you struggle with any sort of depression, I'll say that this next minute or so is going to be a little heavy. I'll say this, that gosh, when I was in my most chaotic moment, I was in a jail cell and we had like this little shower off to the side with this little curtain. Went to the shower with a sheet from the bed and I put it around my neck. I begged God. I said, God, I know you're real. I know you say that you love me. And if you love me, you don't want me to hurt. And if you love me that much, then you'll let this bed sheet do its job and take my life. It didn't. And I was so angry for a minute going, first off, I couldn't kill myself, right? And so I was angry with myself, but I was also angry with God. I'm like, God, why do you want me to just sit in this? Why do you want me to feel this hurt? So for my own personal life, it was such a journey of going, I have to figure out what hope really is and what light looks like so I can find my way out of this darkness. And that's why I talk so much about Jesus, is because he came in and he wrecked me, but in such a good way. For real, it was for me was I had nothing else to lean on, no other hope. And thankfully, I found Jesus in such a deep way that he was able to come alongside me, help me find my way back to overcoming the overwhelming.
I've talked to a lot of folks who have been maybe on a similar road as you. And they're like, you know what, Neil? There was this moment where I had to realize there was something above me. There was something beyond me. There was something that I couldn't really tangibly touch. I couldn't really even see with my own eyes. But I knew there was a higher purpose. And I'm like, cool, what is that higher purpose? And they're like, well, you know, I think it was. And they never really unequivocally say, no, listen, without Jesus, Jesus, I'm not even here maybe. And so to me, it tells me at least that he is real. There are those that say he's not real. He's a figment of my imagination. Yeah, that was just a coincidence, Neil. That didn't really happen. And to me, I'm like, no, there's just too many people who speak of the same type of thing that's happened to them. It's too coincidental. You know, maybe one person, okay, fine. 10 people, okay, I'm not. 20, 40, like how many is it going to take for someone who is, so to speak, on the skeptic fence to say, well, that was just a coincidence. You know, he didn't really show up. Come on.
Yeah, I would, first off, when you were talking, I started thinking about what love really looks like. Even if I think of my dad, you don't tell your parents everything that you've done in your life. It's not what you do. Most people don't do that, at least. And you have that one friend that you may share everything with. You don't really know true love until the person that you're trying to get that true love from knows your deepest, darkest parts of your life. If they know who you really are inside and out, every crevice, every part of you, and they still choose to love you, that's true love. And for me, okay, there is someone who loves me so much, despite everything I've done, everything that I've become, that sort of thing. It's true. Jesus did that for me. It was almost like a light bulb clicked on for me going, wow, I am loved. When I was just sad and depressed and going, there's no hope, I thought that no one could love me, that sort of thing. Your dad, well, my dad loves me. He says that. Does he really love every part of me? And those sorts of questions sink in to find out that there's a guy named Jesus who loves me despite all that I've done and all that I may have become at an earlier age. Yes, he still loves me. And so first off, when you were talking, that really came to the forefront of my brain. I was like, that's such a cool concept. So thank you for that. For me, in so many people's lives, how, yes, like you said, there's just that testimony of, is this, what'd you call it? The steeple people? That's the steeple people word, right? Their testimony. But it's so true that their testimony also brings such a light going, oh, wow, God's doing some miraculous sorts of things. And I think in the Bible, we see stories where Jesus grew the dude's ear back as Peter cut off the man's ear. And we see him heal the blind and heal the lame. And we can go down the list of all the things Jesus did. He walked on water. I don't know about you. If I step out onto my pool right now, I'm sinking. But he did not do that. He stands firm. And I think we think of all of those miracles and we go, well, that's such a fable. That's such a storybook picture of what Jesus does. And we think that that's what it looks like for a miracle to take place. He still heals. He still does miraculous things in people's lives. It may not look like an ear growing back. He is in the healing business, whether it's someone who was depressed, who they've been in the bed for 5 days and today's day 6, and they're deciding to get up out of bed today, get dressed and fix a meal and at least turn the TV on. They're taking steps forward. And that's part of the healing process. To me, it just points back to Jesus. He's part of that healing process with these men and these women. And that's what's so cool to me is I've seen it happen where people just tell me it's like, I was nothing. I was lost, but then I was found. And yes, again, steeple people right there. That's a good steeple people line all day long.
I value what you're saying. I think so many times, maybe that's the problem in our society, is not enough people want to acknowledge who really is holding the umbrella. I mean, one of my favorite stories of all time is the Footprints poem. Even in the chaos, even in the midst of when we think he wasn't there, it's like, no, actually, I was there. I was carrying you. And to me, it just goes to show that even in the midst of it all, he's there. It's up to us whether we want to acknowledge him being there because, probably much like your dad, I would imagine your dad sounds like a gentleman. Jesus isn't going to force his way into your life. He's just not. If you don't want him there, guess what? He doesn't have to be there.
Yeah. I think of he stands at the door and knocks. And I think it's important to remember he knocks. Now, he's the Almighty. He could walk through the door. He could buzz down the door. He could do whatever he wanted. He's God. He chooses to knock. He allows you to be the one who answers. I don't know about you, but I think that's such a great thing. That's respect. It's saying that I'm not going to just barge in on you. I'm going to knock and I'm going to sit here, like you said, gentlemen, and wait for you to answer.
And it just feels like in this day and age, we need more gentlemen. We need more people that are going to speak again into the chaos, provide the umbrella when there is the storms of life. And again, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't make a Noah joke. Noah being in the ark, all kinds of rain coming, telling people, hey, it's going to rain. It's going to rain. Now, mind you, it hadn't rained ever. And they're like, this rain thing that you're talking about, we have no idea what you're talking about. We've never seen rain. We don't even know what that looks like. And I love the idea that maybe you're gathering some folks together to say, no, the rain's coming. The rain's coming. I have a way that can help you in the chaos. I have a way to save you from the chaos. Again, not that you're a saving angel or avenging angel or a protector of those. The idea to say, no, there is something coming and it's called chaos. You can try your very best to avoid it. You can try your very best. It's going to happen. But how you respond to it, how you come back from it, that's really the key to it all. And I love that you're saying all these things. So speaking of the book, we've kind of hovered around it. We've circled around it. We've flown around it. But let's get into it deeper if we can. Where's the best place folks can go and get it and maybe even connect with you on a deeper level away from this conversation?
Yeah, so website first and foremost is the NoahAsher.com, thenoahasher.com. On there, you can find all the places that the book is sold, like Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Walmart, Books A Million, christianbook.com for all the steeple people out there. Great resources there for you to check it out. You can do ebook, paperback, hardcover. I was actually talking about with some friends that it almost looks like it's the perfect farmhouse cover design that looks great on anyone's coffee table. If you need a nice decorative book for your coffee table, it's great. If your coffee table is leaning a little bit, it's also great to put underneath and hold up your coffee table. And I'm just kidding. But yeah, you can check it all out on thenoahasher.com for sure.
Well, Noah, I know you've done a number of these and you will continue to do a number of these as the book continues to get its own platform, if you will. I'm wondering about this for you. Maybe some nerves came over you, maybe the distraction of the dog, perhaps, but there is one more place that you forgot. See, speaking of, he heard his name.
You mentioned dog and he barks.
I did. My fault. You forgot to mention one place that it's also going to be. It's also going to be at opspodcast.com/books that I love. Apparently, Tommy Lasorda wrote a book, so we had to put his book above your book. I don't know if you know who Tommy Lasorda is. We had to put his book above yours. I hope you don't mind with that.
I guess I'm okay with it.
Longtime Dodgers manager, Tommy Lasorda from the 80s. So here's my question in the creative process. I'm always wondering about this. Your favorite chapter and your harder chapter to write. I don't think there's ever a bad chapter. I mean, maybe there is.
Okay, well, I would say I try to write every chapter with hope, help, humor. I provide a little bit of hope. I give them a little, what I call like, I wish, you remember that song where it's like, I wish you would step back from that ledge, my friend. If you guys.
Yes, I believe you're quoting Jumper from
Third Eye Blind.
Third Eye Blind.
Yeah,
Third Eye Blind.
I actually call my introduction that. I wish you would step back from that ledge, my friend. So every chapter is designed to, okay, if you're on the ledge, let me give you a little bit of hope to get you off the ledge. And then say, okay, now that you're off, let me provide a little bit of help so you don't go back to the ledge. So that hope and help is intertwined. But the third thing I like to do is provide a little bit of humor. And every chapter, you're going to see some jokes, some different references that make it a fun read, even though like the message is so heavy. I would say that my favorite chapter, and I will say that it fluctuates. My favorite chapter right now that I lean into is probably the one called Grace Filter. And in the Grace Filter, I talk about how cool it would be if Instagram had a filter like that. it could look at someone who's canceled and you put the filter of grace on and you don't see canceled anymore, you see called. Instead of seeing unworthy, you see worthy. When you see broken, you see whole through the grace filter. One of the references I look at the beginning of that chapter is I discuss Simba from The Lion King and how he was called a murderer by Scar, which was his uncle, his own family members, calling him a murderer and basically calling him a failure at the same time. So Simba runs. He runs from his chaos. He runs from all that he has going on. And in that moment, he starts to question who he is. At the same time, he's believing the lies of, at the time, his enemy, which is murderer, failure, words like that. And then all of a sudden, he meets these two hippies along the way, Timon and Pumbaa. They teach him a new philosophy of life, Hakuna Matata. And in that process, he looks up in the sky and he sees his dad. It may have been one of the bad bugs that he ate. I don't know what. I'm just kidding. He looks up in the sky and he sees his dad, Mufasa. And Mufasa goes, "Hey, Simba, remember who you are." And in that moment, I think we have to understand that when we're going through something and we start to believe the lies of the enemy, that we're all of these things that are words like failure and etc., is that God comes along as our Heavenly Father and says, "Hey, remember who you are." And I could take it a step further and say, remember whose you are, the child of God. And it kind of goes full circle there back to how important our Heavenly Father is that we are his children. And he loves us no matter what. And again, he doesn't see failure. He sees loved. He doesn't see unworthy. He sees his child who is called by him. So that would probably be my favorite chapter right now. I really lean into that because it's such a cool reminder that, hey, we're not what the world may say we are. And so it's a pretty cool chapter. I would say the hardest chapter to write and to like lean into when you're in your chaos. And I wrote some of these chapters, part of the chapters at least, in my chaos. I was writing it going, okay, what do I need to hear in this moment? So I was kind of like giving my own pep talk to myself. Okay, like let's discuss this. This will make me feel better. And so some of this was written while in my own chaos. It was in my aftermath that I finished writing this. Anyways, to say all of that, I would say the hardest chapter to write, there's days where I don't want to live up to it, would be the chapter called Eeyore Syndrome. And in Eeyore Syndrome, I talk about Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh and how he's the type of person who's walking around going, woe is me. There's always a cloud over me. If it's raining in one spot, it's going to be over me. That sort of mentality. And I think it's easy to get sucked into that idea that, oh, it's the trauma. I'm damaged. I'm nothing more than a failure, that sort of thing. And in that chapter, we talk about how in Gideon's life, how he was sitting in the wine press. And in that wine press, He's hiding from the Midianites. And God comes to him and is like, hey, I want you to do this, this, this. There's only one question Gideon really had in that moment, and it was, why me? God doesn't even like give an answer to the why question. He goes from the why to the how. And I think it's so important in our own chaos and our own pain a lot of times is we can find purpose in our pain when we stop asking why me and start telling God, please use me. And that whole chapter is really helping people go from why me to use me. The reason that chapter is so hard to write, as the writer, I feel like now I have to live that out. And there's days where I don't want to live that out. Sometimes I want to be Eeyore and I want to just say, today's a bad day, and I want to vent and I want to have my little pity party. And then I'm reminded, oh yeah, we have to get out of that mindset. And so that would probably be the hardest one to write, actually live out.
We have to get out of bed. We have to put on the shoes and we have to get ready to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes it's going to rain. If you live in Seattle, it probably rains a lot. I think I heard somewhere along the lines of 350 days a year, Seattle gets the most rain out of anywhere in the world.
Wow.
Well, maybe not in the world, but the United States at least. And I think, man, what a depressing place to live. And then somebody told me, well, yeah, they have like one of the highest suicide rates in the nation is in Seattle. That's really sad. They need an umbrella. Two, they need some hope.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why the Sonics left. It was so depressing there. Okay, bad joke. Bad joke.
Well, I will say what you were just saying. I do want to make sure I mention this because it's so important to me to say that I think a lot of times someone will give someone a message of hope, or they'll share their testimony, and their testimony will be so crazy cool of all that God did. And then they look at their life and like, wow, my testimony is I just went to church Sunday and accepted Jesus into my heart. And it's like, oh, what's this about? It's the same mindset too when people are going through chaos and they're going, wow, cool. This person went from way over here all the way to over here. Now they're a published author. They own their own business and all these sorts of things and all these big milestones. And honestly, if you're going to watch a movie in the theaters around Christmas holidays, it's always going to be some inspirational movie, how the underdog just excelled and did so much, the basis of every Disney movie in general. And I think that a lot of times it's hard to get out of bed if you think, wow, the only way for me to overcome is if I do something big today. And it's like, no, overcoming the overwhelming, it's a great milestone and a great step forward. Like you just said, when you get out of bed and you put on your shoes, because other people's shoes, when you put on people's shoes, but when you put on your shoes and you can get up out of bed and you can make it another day, that's a step forward. And that's something worth celebrating. And I don't ever want people to think that, well, gosh, I can't go kill an army of Midianites like Gideon did today, and so I might as well not try. No, just get out of bed. Take that one step.
And sometimes that's all it takes. Take the one step.
Yeah.
Well, Noah, as we wrap up today, if somebody right now, again, is listening and they're struggling and they're going again, well, you know, Neil, that's great for you and Noah. That's great that you have found the umbrella to help walk us through the chaos of life. It's so cool that you've done that. But right now, I don't want to go outside. Maybe, again, they're stuck in that Eeyore mentality, or maybe they're being a Simba and they're like, you know what? I'm running from everything I can run from. You don't know how bad it was for me.
Yeah.
What would you say would be step one of practicality of saying, okay, here's step one. Let's not worry about 87 other steps. Let's worry about step one at this moment.
I heard a pastor once say that God cannot heal what you don't reveal. And so I would start with it's a basic prayer, and a prayer is just a conversation. So if you need to lay down like you're on a couch talking to a counselor, cool, do it that way. Do whatever you need to do. Just say, hey, today, God, you know what? I'm struggling, and this is what I'm struggling with. Be open, be real, be raw. Tell him what you're struggling with, and then just ask him for some hope. And I think that's a good first step for anyone to take is first, I mean, when you think about the steps of grief, what's the first thing? Admitting, right? Like, okay, I have a problem. You know, that sort of mentality. Tell God, you know what? I have a problem. I am so depressed. I am so sad. I have this going on in my life. I don't know how I'm ever going to overcome this. Start with a conversation with God and just tell him, you know what, this is where I'm at, but I don't want to stay where I'm at. I want to step forward. Help me. And I think there's something therapeutic about just coming to the wonderful counselor and telling him what is really going on in your life.
I love it a lot. I want to say again, Noah, thank you so much for the time you gave us. Thank you so much for the practical steps. And I hope people go out right now and get a copy of the book and get it at Amazon. They can get it at all the amazing places that you mentioned. If there's one person right now listening who says, I can't write this letter, what would you tell them?
Ooh, that they can't write this letter?
Yeah, for whatever reason, they can't sit down. And I mean, again, this whole season we're talking about and we're encouraging people to write a letter to that one person that they can't say, they can't do it for whatever reason. Maybe they've passed, or maybe there's just so much history there. There are those brave people. Now I know there's probably many others that we could have gotten on, but you're one of the few that we chose. What would you encourage them, or how would you encourage them to sit down and actually physically write this letter? What would be your encouragement?
I would think that some people may not want to write the letter at first. If there's animosity between them, they feel as if, okay, I don't want to do this for you. Well, you're not doing it for them. You're doing it for yourself. The whole thing of forgiveness in general is you're not forgiving somebody for them. You're forgiving them for you. And to me, this writing of a letter to my dad, it wasn't that I had to forgive him for anything, is so therapeutic. It was such a great way of just saying, hey, Dad, this is how I feel. I'm laying it out there. And if you need to write the letter, and if you need to be super just honest and lay it all out there, and then after you read it and proofread it and go, ooh, this is too far, I should not have said all these things to the person I was writing this letter to, cool, rip it up, burn it, start over. You know how many times I picked up my phone and shot a text to someone I was angry at? I just laid it all out there. Then I started reading back because I was like, I'm not going to send an angry text and there's going to be all these grammatical errors. I'm not doing that. Then so I start proofreading it. And as I'm reading it, I go, ooh, this is too far. And I start using my backspace. So if you're typing the letter, guess what? You have a backspace button for a reason. Use that backspace. So lay it all out there. And then sit on it for a minute and say, all right, is this really what I need to say to that person? Write it. Write the letter. Write it to somebody. If you need to tell someone thank you, tell them thank you while they're still around. I can attest to that. If you need to tell someone, hey, you hurt me. This has been a long journey of recovery for myself because of how you hurt me, the words you said or the actions you did. Please understand, by forgiving them and writing them a letter, it's not only for them, it's for you. There's something that will just release inside you when you write this letter. So I'm all about it. I'm a writer, so I love to write. So I may be biased on the letter writing campaign movement. I definitely believe in just laying it all out there with people.
I think that's powerful. All right, kids and campers, that is it. That is all. That is our show today as we put the letter back in the envelope. Does anybody else have one of these? Just curious. I know this is going to shock some. I have a shoebox full of just letters and cards and ribbons. Okay, not those type of ribbons, like running ribbons. I turned it into my running accomplishment shoebox. But in that, there's a handwritten note from my dad, from my mom, from special people. But I'm wondering about this for you. What does Noah mean when he says that there is truly an umbrella to help you in the chaos? What does that mean for you? Is that the letter that you're hoping to get one day? Is that somebody's going to come into your life and say, listen, the chaos, the junk, the things that you've been running from, it's okay. I can handle it. The crazy thing about an umbrella too is you can have two hands holding the umbrella in most cases. So who's holding your hand today as you walk through the life of chaos? Whose hand is interlocked with yours? And if you're like, you know what, Neil, I don't have that person. Okay, so don't go to Costco because you're not going to find it there. Don't go to Kmart or Target. You're not going to find it there either. Maybe this is the moment you sit down and say, who's going to walk and hold my hand in the chaos of life? Something to ponder as we get out of here. Remember this. Remember, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. Stay tuned till next week when we walk in other people's shoes.